Hello and welcome to the Drawing Room Experts. This is Zaib, back at it now after the cricket episode released last week, um, or something like that. I don't want to say when this one's going to go out, but um, I was planning to do this one a few weeks ago, actually a couple of months ago, when um, when AEW decided to part ways with CM Punk. Yeah, and we're talking wrestling this particular episode. Um, and I've made no qualms and no um, secret about the fact that I'm a CM Punk fan. Have been since 2010, I think. Um, and then the pipe bomb happened in 2011 or something like that. I've been, an admirer of his work ever since. And then when he very unceremoniously left wrestling, professional wrestling in 2013, um, from WWE, which at the time was one of the biggest promoters, if not the biggest promoter in that space. Um, and anything outside of it looked pretty small and seemed pretty small and unfit for the the star power that CM Punk brings. So obviously, I mean, you did not see CM Punk until 2021, which is about 7 years after the fact. And my last episode, when I talked about AEW and WWE and the comparison, um, is gonna look pretty look pretty bad in comparison, because I made some really interesting claims. I didn't get a chance to go back to that episode because I remember I'm thinking about it now, and I think I may have said something along the lines that, why AEW uh, captured my attention, and may have said some really nice things about it. And to be honest, I also don't feel I said it on merit too much, and I think I made that pretty clear that I'm a CM Punk fan at the time as well, and I'm watching the promotion purely because of that, or following the promotion. I mean, let me just say, I don't think I've watched a wrestling show for the full 2 hours or 1 hour, or whatever the time limit is these days, since 2000. I don't know, maybe two or three, maybe three. I would say three. So since 2003, or four. Well, I don't know. I don't know actually. 4 or 5, perhaps. I don't think beyond that I have seen it on a regular basis. I remember coming back from school, and we had, I think I may have mentioned this in the previous episode as well, when we talked about AW and WWE, that uh, I followed the full program. I followed the brands. I followed Raw and SmackDown. I followed each storyline, watched the full show in its entirety. Um, I don't think I've done that since. With the advent of social media, it becomes easier to follow snippets and see some videos here and there, and that's what I've done. But even that stopped when CM Punk left WWE, until he resurfaced again in AEW in 2021. Now, at the time, I had no idea about AEW until, when I dug around. I mean, it didn't need to dig around too much. It was all out there. Tony Khan, owner of Fulham Football Club and son of um, the Jaguars NFL team owner Shahid Khan, Pakistani descent, and so there were some connections there, some imaginable, imaginary connections that I had to the the brand that is AEW, and through the ownership, and I, even with CM Punk's arrival, I didn't start watching the shows, like the 2 hour show, whatever that was, the Dynamite, and and now Collision, on Wednesdays and Saturdays. I think they do a show on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Is it Collision, Dynamite, Collision, Dynamite, and one more show I'm forgetting. But yeah, I did not follow those shows. I did not watch those shows. I did follow the developments, particularly to the storylines that interests me. Obviously, CM Punk being the primary storyline that I was following. And uh, I think until the first year, if I'm not mistaken, that CM Punk spent in AEW was just remarkable. I think it was, after 7-8 years, whatever it was, when he's coming back into professional wrestling. I think the first year took its toll in terms of how he was promoted on TV, and I think AEW was able to get a good TV deal with Time Warner, with CM Punk being one of the biggest reasons for that, and um, they were starting to get some traction. I mean, passive and really really late passive fans like myself was able to started to get noticed, and then I got pulled into this the tribalism that still exists in wrestling, and I had no idea that it used to exist back in the day when I was following the whole sport, um, uh, particularly closely. But the industry is, I mean, I don't know, I mean, for me it's been an eye-opener to see how the industry kind of works. And but anyway, going back to the CM Punk story, so I started watching, the first year goes pretty smoothly, and you can see that he's being eased into the big games, the bigger games. I mean, the first year had the storyline with MJF, which I thought one of the best on mic, verbal battles that you would ever see in both WWE and AEW. And at the time, I don't remember if it was treated like a big thing, um, like it truly deserved. But it did get some traction. The fans were interested. MJF being the character the first time getting introduced to this character, and got to be honest, I did not really like him at the start. I thought he was a CM Punk wannabe, added some color from Jericho, perhaps. Um, and yeah, and then Ric Flair perhaps as well. You might argue, but I'm not ashamed to say that the character grew on me even during the time when CM Punk was there. I was interested in that character and what it would do, and how it would blur the lines between what's real and what's character work and what's work. And in the case of MJF, there's no character work. That's just him, 24/7 working through it. And to this day, I'm not sure anybody knows what his real personality is like. I'm pretty sure there is one, and he can't be like this person that he is on screen 24/7. But that's just my opinion. He, I think had those same characteristics that CM Punk had when he was starting out in WWE, and before that ROH and others. Um, he knew how to get out of the shell that TV wrestling was becoming, and I think that perhaps turned me off as well, because it was too scripted, it was too unrealistic, and it was too just too much spoon feeding. There was not so much reality around it. There wasn't much you know genuineness behind it. I mean, authenticity is the word, perhaps. You know, that was missing, and I think MJF kind of like hooked me in because of that too. Because he was able to address real life issues. He would name drop WWE and their superstars very frequently in an AEW promotion in an AEW show. And for non-wrestling fans, that must be like, so what? Like, but just imagine, in someone who's in, in Pakistan, I think they would perhaps relate to this better, because you're not allowed to say the other TV channel's name, in another TV channel for whatever fuck reason that is. And me coming from that kind of culture, seeing what wrestling was doing, and granted there weren't any more bigger promotions than WWE at the time, but still, there was this idea that WWE does not um, recognize what's going outside of its own bubble, and it was a massive bubble too. And AEW, although not a massive bubble, um, was starting to become like this really big promotion, and was addressing and recognizing, acknowledging that there's a fucking bigger brand out there. Let's be honest. And it's WWE, and they would name drop Triple H. He would name drop Roman Reigns. He would name drop even Cody. Well after he had left for WWE. So there was that authenticity about it. People were like, yeah, these guys are just like us, and they're talking, and they're not gonna like fucking read a script and be very robotic about it. So and that got me thinking about the fact that, why did I start liking MJF as a character, as a product you know uh, on TV, um, and I think that got me back to thinking about, why do I like CM Punk in the first place, and why not any other characters? It's not like I didn't enjoy Triple H's of this world, or Undertaker's, or The Rock, Stone Cold, Chris Jericho, and others, even Edge and Christian. Um, it's just the uniqueness about it, I think, kind of like caught me hook, line, and sinker. And it was, a lot of the uniqueness was, uh, because of the fact that they weren't reading from a script. They were real, and they would, you know, break the fourth wall, so to speak, and take names when nobody was willing to take them. So I feel like, I think that perhaps creates that uniqueness about CM Punk as well. I mean, I wonder all the time. I mean, what is it about this guy that he has a pretty successful, I would think, looking back at it, a pretty decent WWE career before he left, as I mentioned, unceremoniously. And yet, every time a WWE show or any promotion would go to Chicago, or anywhere else for that matter, they would just chant his name, and it would become really difficult for WWE to ignore. And they tried to do that a lot. They there was no mention of him. It's like it didn't exist. Now all of a sudden you see WWE bringing up their his classic matches from the past, and just telling the whole story of CM Punk, and owning up to this guy who was there for nearly a decade before he left. And he. But what was it about him? What was it about him that really caught people's attention? And people, not just the attention, but this that real estate in people's mind that was occupied by this guy for years, even after where he was inactive, and not maybe meeting the fans. He wasn't doing anything. He had a little stint with UFC that wasn't the best, to be honest, but outside of that, it was very minimal interaction with the fan. He was pretty much sidelined. And I think, as I mentioned, the genuineness, the authenticity of his character was one of the reasons. The other thing was, I think people genuinely felt bad for him, because there was this thing about him getting his severance papers from WWE on the day when he got married, and there was some health issues that WWE kept ignoring the talent that had those issues, and then they were pushing certain superstars ahead of others when um, just based on who had the brass ring and and whatnot. And and uh, so I think that kind of, I'm thinking perhaps that developed that, camaraderie, and they kind of like, people were turning off of WWE, or perhaps growing up for that matter, like myself, and growing out of it, growing out of wrestling, and was not a kid's sport anymore. It was like, yeah, whatever, it's fake. Spoiler alert. Kind of added to this persona that he had created of himself, and there's some mystique about him, and he was just a problem child for his bosses. So people kind of related to that. That he would speak the truth to power. He was the voiceless, as he would refer to himself as. So I think there are many other facets of it, but nothing bigger than the fact that he is a fantastic in-ring performer. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I mean, there's no one on the planet that would argue that he's not a fantastic in-ring performer. That he is. And then his storytelling, the way, his in-ring mic skills, it's just second to none. He can drop a promo, uh the right environment. I mean, he can create a hype out of nothing. That's how good he is with his storytelling and his words, and convincing as well. I think he convinces himself before he thinks that he would want to convince others. So that's why I think there's that excellence about him as well. And he's an astute student of the game. He loves wrestling, to the core. He's not there just to make money, as he would say now, but he's also just, he really loves the business. So that you get that, astuteness from his as astuteness from him as well, that this guy is a student of the sport, um and entertainment. So you know there's just so much mystique around him. Goes to AEW, gets fired 2.5 years later, almost gets fired first, then gets fired for real. And yeah, I mean, the way he left AEW was a huge turnoff for me, to be honest, from AEW, because it was just, um, I get some of the rationale that was shared. I mean, it's just, even if I was in Tony's position, would I have done the same? I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel for Tony that to be in that position, because if he does it, he's looked at as some, short-sighted, stupid little man, which he is now being observed as. That he let him go, and now he's this big property in WB's supposed, their supposed competitors. But then if he doesn't do it, he looks weak. You know what I mean? Um, so I kind of feel for him. He's in a very tough. It was in a very tough spot. But even before that, I feel like AEW has some major identity crisis, and they've just only recently, like as a company that started like 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, and they've been on TV last 2 3 years perhaps, and um, I think they need to understand, and this is something that I've really learned to learn from listening to the likes of Eric Bischoff, another one of my favorite characters from WWE, and he has this podcast or a show that he does on YouTube, 83 Weeks, and listening to him, some others, it kind of it makes sense, because there is, at the end of the day, this identity crisis is that, are you a wrestling promotion company who does dream matches, so the fans and the indie fans kind of enjoy it because, oh yeah, Mr. A has never wrestled Mr. B, so therefore let's do that and put that on the bill, people will come and watch it. Yeah, that's how indie kind of perhaps works. But if you're going to treat this as a TV show, which it should be because you're on TV every week, and you're trying to get eyeballs to stick with you for 2 hours, you need a, and in this day and age of, like, um of streaming and binging, people need something to hang on to, and that is story. That is a compelling story. That is a compelling storyline. You need a reason to see why the dream match is happening, even if it's like fucking Rock versus Hogan. There needs to be a story that leads into it. You can't just book it and then do it, and then that's it. You move on. I think that's what I felt like was missing at AEW a lot, because I would see these great matches, and no doubt these were some great performances, but there was no story behind it. Like, why are these guys fighting? Why are these guys so desperate to beat one another? To win. What is it adding to the story? And that's something I picked up from Eric, and I you know, and that kind of stuck with me, and it made sense. And that's what I feel AW was lacking, and is lacking as well. But for compelling storylines, you need compelling characters. You need to have a great character like MJF, which they do. And they have a pretty decent storyline going with him, and Adam Cole, and now Samoa Joe. There's this question about like who's the man behind the mask. The whole thing's going on in the back, which people were for some time thinking that's perhaps CM Punk, because that would have been unbelievable if that had happened, or more so I think than the WWE promotion return, maybe. But so there's that storyline, and I like the storyline between Edge and Christian. That gets me interested, but that's it. And granted, WWE does not have the same kind of storylines, that I can think of. Perhaps outside of the Bloodline, there's not much me as a passive fan know anything about. And there might be some other great storylines going on at the company, which I'll put my hand up, I have no idea about. But these kind of things matter. If you're going to put up a TV show, you got to put up the story. You got to have a story, and then tell that story in a fashion that really keeps people tuning in, week out, and then perhaps buying the pay-per-view a month later, 2 months later, whatever it is. So I think that's what I feel like AEW was desperately missing. And the identity crisis I feel like they're going through right now. I mean, I do feel AEW is needed as a promotion, as a company within the space, purely from a competition standpoint. But it's going to be very interesting to see how they survive this setback. I think you literally take in a huge star in CM Punk, made him relevant, did all that work on him, invested that time, TV time on him, gave him some great moments on TV. And now you fire him and then put him in your biggest competitor's lap for basically free, because it's just you did it like it WWE kind of like it AEW kind of like did WWE's work for them. So it feels very it is a genius move, by Triple H, to be honest, I feel, because I did agree with, again, going back to Eric Bischoff and his show, did agree with him when he said that, does WWE need him? No, because they have such good numbers and people are invested in the brand as is. They don't need, CM Punk to make the WWE relevant. For maybe for fans like me, it did, but we're not in the majority at all. So outside of purely spite and purely just like trying to go for the kill, the juggernaut, the jugular of AEW as a promotion, I don't see any other reason why they would go for it. I mean, Punk wins, he wins the, from a financial aspect, and then he wins from the legitimacy aspect, because this makes him looks better than when he was when he was fired from AEW. So he has so much to gain from it. AEW has no game. AEW has nothing to gain from this. WWE only just those pop moments to gain from it. Nothing too substantial outside of the money aspect. But what are we looking at now? We're looking at this massive superstar who returned to WWE after nearly 10 years, did a promo on Raw, a little uninspiring, to be honest, but it was okay. It was just 6 minutes, so didn't have much time either. Um, Enough to get people start to talk about him again, and it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I so want him to have a great career. I so want him to be a Hall of Famer, uh, in this industry, and to be successful. Um, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Time perhaps catches up, and if he is the cancer that people think he is, then things will blow up sometime in the future as well. So this is my caveat. The next time I do an episode of wrestling, when I talk about CM Punk, perhaps in another promotion, but um, yeah, I feel like I think Trump, fucking hell, uh, CM Punk, in his own words, I think he has changed, and I think WWE has that professional structure around it, like great, script writers, storyline that can be developed and built around him, and then him being at where he is now in his career and life. The hindsight of what he went through in AEW and WWE both, I think he is also a smarter person. And big boy pants. This is the big leagues. There's no two ways about it. And there are adults in the room, and people put their egos aside and get things done. We're looking at a really, really successful, soul crushing WWE for the next 4 to 5 years at least. Given everyone's health, and you can milk him out. With the whole angle with Seth Rollins, and there could be an angle created with Stone Cold. They're talking about that as a dream match. I don't think that should happen, to be honest. Stone Cold, maybe not now, maybe 10, 20, 10, 15 years ago, perhaps. There's this angle with the bloodline, and Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman somehow involved. That could be that's a storyline looking to write itself. So yeah, there's like the possibilities are endless with this one. There's so many things, so many angles you can play this with, and even perhaps attracting better talents from AEW, which this move will definitely do. You already signed two of their biggest, this year in CM Punk and, well, not this year, but in recent times, CM Punk and Cody. So yeah, I mean, exciting times. I'm gonna be following again. Let's see how this goes, but yeah, don't forget to subscribe to the channel on YouTube. It really helps with the algorithm. Follow us on Instagram. If you're listening to us, audio platforms, we're on Spotify, we're on um, Amazon Music, we're on Google Podcasts, Samsung Podcasts, we're everywhere. So anywhere you can find an audio platform to listen to podcasts, I'm pretty sure I'm there. So yeah, with that and said, I'll meet you guys back with another one. Thanks.